Let me record this. Okay. So tonight, well, let me start off by saying Saturday we have the Generation XYZ Sahavas, which includes the baby boomers. I'm going to blame this on Jeff. He wanted a catchy name. Not my fault. But baby boomers are included in that. Anyway.
We
so,
add WXYZ. We put the
WXYZ.
That means
Why don't we just,
four generations.
we're generation A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P. Everybody's included. Anyway, so tonight we have the beautiful and wonderful and one of my favorite people in the world, Alisa, joining us.
Thank you.
Has been of the planning of this, not necessarily directly with Jeff and I, but we were working on a project for England, which has kind of shaped this whole concept for the Generation XYZ Sahavas. So I wanted to have her on here, and obviously we have Jeff too, but just start to talk about what the intention of this Sahavas is, right? It's not to get political and have people fight about generation. Obviously we know that to be the case. It's more to create community. So Alisa, I know that this is a topic that you are super passionate about. And so can you just speak to that a little bit and kind of where your motivation with getting involved in all this is?
Sure. Margi just asked me to come on this just a few days ago. So this is going to be just really off the top because I haven't really, prepared anything for this. So I just want to put that out. But I could say that I've been interested in this topic Jeff and I have talked about this for years, and I was always kind of trying to think of ways that, the older generation could maybe bridge and reach out to the younger generation, and we could sort of like begin to be more collaborative together as we move on. And it never seemed like, I don't know, it just never seemed like the right time, or the ripe, I should say, not right, but ripe time. And just recently with this England Sahavas, Jeff asked me if I would join, and it was just like the opening that I had been waiting for so long. Like, this was just like, I jumped on the opportunity to be involved. And then when I heard that Margi was going to be involved, I was just like, sign me up. I want to be. So we started working on this probably pretty in earnest. I was looking back on the notes. It was back in March. We started in March meeting, me, Margi, and Jeff, and then we started meeting with the people in England too, to discuss what the needs were for the England group in order to, what they were looking for, and then just what we could do, what we could bring to it. And through our meetings, we just started having all of these really inspiring conversations about, just ways in which we could begin to open the conversations about these perceptions of disconnection, which I think Margi's podcast that, they entitled the series of interviews, The Perceptions of Misconception. And I really think the more I've really worked with this and the more I've been thinking about it, I really do think there's a lot of perceptions, and a lot of it comes down to how we begin to internalize this, this so-called divide that exists between us. So it's been, it's just been an ever deepening and evolving thing. And I'm just really excited to open the conversation with you all, and very excited to see what comes out of the Sahavas on Saturday.
Yeah, thank you, Alisa. And in Alisa's defense, I didn't even give her a few days. I asked her yesterday. So this is very much
this is definitely off the top, but
on the conversation. So as Alisa mentioned, this conversation that Jeff, her, and myself were having regarding England. So basically, who don't know, there's an intergenerational Sahavas that's happening in London and Shropshire in the end of September, beginning of October. And Alisa, Jeff and Alisa will be there. And then I was a part of sort of like formulating the plan for it, and just, getting the younger voices heard and what it will take. And so I thought it would be really cool if Alisa and I, and even Jeff too, can kind of sum up some of what has come out of those meetings. Because even for me as a young person, I was really enlightened by our meetings with the English Sahavas committee. And then also, as Alisa said, Michelle McKeever and I run a Baba podcast, and we did a whole series on the perceptions of disconnection, where we basically interviewed was 5 different people from different generations, just about their take on this intergenerational divide, why it exists, what the perceptions are. And so Alisa, I know you've listened to all of the episodes. And so can I ask you, what were the things that surprised you most that the younger people said about why they feel disconnected? Like, did anything stand out to you that you, oh, I never thought about it like that?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things. Just the idea that I was hearing from some of the younger people, the idea that they are not sort of appreciated for who they are or what they are bringing or how they relate to Baba, and are not seen or not understood in that way, and maybe even a sense that they were being judged. I think that was one of the real surprising things for me, like that their sort of way or their understanding of Baba was not in line with how it should be. And then the whole idea of what it's going to take to have them step up, this whole like stepping up thing kind of is very off-putting to them. And I know that is something that has kind of, I've heard being said, what will it take, or how will we get the young people to be more involved? Or do the young people want to be involved? That kind of thing, like second guessing. So that realizing how that was landing, I think, was something that was a little surprising to me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, because there were so many things out of that conversation that I was really surprised about. And even talking with you, when Alisa and I talk, we kind of like will bounce off of each other, which is so much why I wanted to have her on tonight to set the tone for this Sahavas that we're having this weekend. And also, I encourage everybody to raise their hands and ask questions, right? If there are questions about the Sahavas or even about what has come out of the podcast episodes, raise your hand and ask. But the thing that surprised me most, and maybe Alisa, you can kind of speak on the other side to this, was how the older generation felt like the younger generation were cut off from them, or they were ousted in some way. Because I think as a younger person, we've had the experience of kind of feeling like we want to put our hands in the pot in some way, but there isn't a lot of room for growth, right? And so Alisa, I know you and I touched in with that. And so can you talk about like what your experience is with the young people, of feeling, not necessarily naming young people that are making you feel left out, but kind of what that experience is, and how it could just be played differently, like how the dance could be done a little bit differently.
I mean, but let me clarify the question. What the young people, how I as an older person feels like received by the young people? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, the one thing that I could say about that is, because I've been somebody that's sort of a little bit in the middle, like I never felt completely disconnected from the younger people. I think I've been always somebody that felt like I could connect more easily with the younger people, but I also have felt, very much that I'm not part of that generation. So I think that what I could say for myself, and I think this is probably true for some other older people in the older generation, is just feeling like, are we respected or wanted, like in terms of approach? Like, okay, are we going to be rejected? Are we going to be received if we go toward the younger people? And I think that that is something that I have been hearing. And I think that is one thing that has maybe interested me and sort of surprised me a little bit from the older generation, like that there's a little bit of, and then maybe a sense of not being welcomed by the younger people. And I think the issue of respect is what as I'm really sitting with this more and more to try to understand what's in the way for the older generation in terms of yielding to the younger generation, or reaching out and being more available to be sort of a mentor toward the younger generation. I think there's a sense of something about respect, and this is what I'd like to hear from other people about too, like the sense that, all right, I'm just going to share something that I haven't even shared with you, Margi, because I've been thinking about this since listening to your recap with Michelle. Some things have come up for me around, like, this whole sense of what respect, the older people have spent much of their lives, because a lot of the people in the older generation spent a lot of time with the Mandali and got really, trained in a lot of ways and mentored by the Mandali. And for those of us who have worked for many years in the Baba world and like at the centers, and I mean, Jeff could speak probably to this too, but I think there's a sense of, first of all, an incredible, gratitude for having had the opportunity to serve in all of these ways, but also a sense of like, the gratitude and the gift that was given to be able to just sort of let that go with all these years of work that have gone into it. I think there's maybe a fear of being loss of control and being marginalized in some way if we sort of yield too much. And so I'm kind of been thinking that there's something about being able to like know that they're not going to be marginalized or loss of control, for allowing the older people to sort of step aside a bit. So that's just something that I've been thinking about, and that's a little undeveloped right now, but I'm just throwing out what has been kind of percolating inside of me to see how it lands with people.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And Alisa, I know I didn't give you a lot of framework for this conversation, but this is just what I was hoping would come out, is like kind of a back and forth, so that you guys can have a little background of really, why we want to do this generation XYZ Sahavas, because I think these are things that we need to talk about even in our meetings. And Jeff, please chime in as much as you want, because you've been in all the meetings too. But the number one thing that I think both Alisa and I notice is that they're perceptions, right? It's a lot of old stories that are being told, whether it's the young people don't want to hear our stories. Because I can say, as a young person attending the Youth Sahavas, the single most attended event at the Youth Sahavas is Charles's talk. So there's something that is happening where, Friday nights in the meeting place, when young people are on center, they don't want to go to those meetings as much. But for some reason, in the atmosphere of the Youth Sahavas, those talks where Baba, people who met Baba or spent time with Baba or spent time with the Mandali, they're desperate. And I even know, like, I'm fortunate enough to be a young person who have met a few of the Mandali. And then I've had a lot of experience with people who have spent a lot of time with the Mandali, and I was always interested as a kid. And I now have kids asking me questions about it and very curious. So the curiosity is there. It's not that, I think that sometimes I get the feeling that there's a perception from the older generation that the young people just don't care, right? And I do think that there's a bit of this feeling that's rooted in feeling like our relationship with Baba is not as valued, because maybe we haven't been with Baba for as many years, right? Like if you were born into a Baba family, maybe, yeah, sure, I could say I've been with Baba for 25 years, but I would say like consciously, really inwardly connected to Baba, it's probably been, I don't know, 13 years, something like that. And so, and that's all a very inner experience. And our experience as the younger generation is very much that inner life. I don't think we have as much of what you guys had of spending time with the Mandali, getting to talk about the experiences that were so close to Baba's advent. And then also we connect so much through each other. So I think that there's a camaraderie that happens amongst the young people, where it could give the perception to the older people that we are isolating them. But really it's just that we feel that connection to Baba so much in each other. Just another perception that I think can kind of be removed. Like we can start to peel back those layers and take it for what it is, where really what I'm hearing from you, Alisa, is the older generation just wants to be heard for their stories. And I think that in the reverse, the younger generation also wants to be heard for their experience with Baba, for their, how they've come to Baba in their own unique way.
Yes, and one of the things that we have talked about, and I guess, and Jeff kind of came up with this wonderful thing of how do you find Baba in your life, and sharing it. I know he did a late night chat. I think, was it a late night chat, Jeff? When you kind of posed those questions, and there was people from all generations, and what began to come out of that, and we even did a model of that, you know, for some of the English group when we were just trying it out, and what comes out of it is a sense of, we're not really that different in how we are approaching Baba and how we are, you know, trying to bring, we all are souls on this journey with Baba, trying to connect with him. And what we started to see is that there's different seasons of our lives with Baba. And so some of the perceptions of disconnection come from, because we're in different places and different times in our life. So like when we were younger, like when I was Margi's age, my relationship with Baba, I was struggling with similar types of issues that Margi is dealing with in my relationship with Baba, you know. But as I've grown, my relationship with Baba has evolved and changed in terms of what I'm struggling with, because I'm in a different stage of my life. And so I think it looks different on the outside, but the truth is we're all really struggling to just get closer to him in whatever way. And then there's one other part of it too, because when I was Margi's age, times around me were very, very different. And, you know, there wasn't, I mean, when I was Margi's age, there wasn't even, I didn't even have a computer. You know, there was like a word processor that came out that was really crazy, you know. So, you know, things have evolved so quickly, which Baba said they would. And so the issues of the world and the ways in which communication happens is all the context, the backdrop to the relationship with Baba. So again, what the young people need, and this is, I think something that also came out and was somewhat surprising, is what the young people may need to, you know, to meet together, and how they meet, and whether centers will be, you know, how centers will be utilized in the future might look very, very different than what it did to us and to what we think is important now, the older generation. So I think there's something about really just knowing that Baba's work is going on, but it's going to change because the times are changing and it has to look different. So that's just another piece of it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I'm having this kind of feeling as you're talking. This is a new, just kind of inspired right now, but that we're kind of taking this like square that we have, and we're trying to fit the younger generation into the square, but they're really a circle. It doesn't mean that they're, you know, it's just, it has to change. It has to shift a little bit, because I know I would actually love to hear from Josh a little bit, because I know he has a lot of thoughts on, you know, what the future of the Baba world is going to look like. And a lot of what I've heard from the young people is they wish that there was more room for all around spirituality, not necessarily the like exact things that we've been doing since the 70s. And that's really a theme when I was talking to the younger generations outside of the podcast episodes, is perhaps these centers that we have need to have a little bit more life. And I do think naturally there is like a sense of, we don't want this to just become a meditation center, right? Like the Mayor Spiritual Center is devoted to Baba. It's Baba's place. And it's never going to be like, I'm trying to compare it to something. I don't, but you get what I'm saying. Just like, we never want it to become just a spiritual healing center of some sort. But I think there is room to allow the young people to really bring in more of their spiritual life, which we're navigating in daily life. And we're doing a lot of things. I'm even talking like sound healing, right? Have more space for that, not to take it away from Baba, but to bring Baba into it, right? Imagine like a sound healing bath in the meeting place. And I think that it would just give the young people a little bit more of the language, a room to speak the language they speak. I want to ask Josh, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you have a lot of feelings that come up around the spaces in the Baba world.
I think this is a very interesting conversation. Yeah, I could talk so much. Yeah, it's very interesting. I do perceive in some of the Australian young people that are also Barber lovers that there is this yeah, they feel like there is some tension with the older community. So I do recognize that this tension is in Australia too, just for those who aren't down under. I also think that it's completely, it reminds me of how Barber would whip up arguments in the ashram. You know how he'd purposely go around and tell someone, this person said this about you, you know, or something like that, or how he purposefully, it feels like Barber's, forgive my French, shit stirring, which seems pretty, so I can understand it. And I'm actually shocked that it's not on a broader scale. I'm like, I can't believe that some of the young people that I know even like sit in the, you know, the same room with some of these older Barber lovers. You know, these are young people that I'd imagine would be out at the clubs and basically not having any contact with someone older than their age where they can help it. So I'm actually incredibly shocked at the extent of the connection between young and old in the Barber lover community. I'm reminded of something that Diane was told me. Yes, you, Diane, ages ago in a Zoom, where she was talking about how when you put a new group together, there's like a period of storming where the group is sort of, where everyone's finding their place in the group. And I think that's happening on a massive level in the Barber lover community. I think it probably has been happening, you know, since Barber's been around, but I think it's still changing shape and color, and there's still this dynamic movement. Yes, it's very, very interesting. There's a lot to say. That's what I'm going to say for the time being, but any specific questions, come back to me, because yeah, I have too many thoughts. You know, I see myself as someone who's probably going to end up, you know, running one Barber center or another in the future. So I feel like I'm a Barber person in the making. Yeah.
Well, so with that, Josh, can I ask, like, number one, what would encourage you to do that sooner? And then how do you foresee that looking? Like, if you could have your
that's
dream,
good questions.
what would that look like?
Yeah,
so I would say pretty much the immediate thing required would be like a career, like would be like actual, for me to know that I can get a little bit of money and not a lot. I'm not a kind of person that wants to live rich, but yeah, to know that there was some funds in the community, you know, that we weren't all skint and dirt poor, you know, like if then I would step up and maybe do some stuff more as well. I do volunteer. I also have terrible health at the moment physically. But then another note is non-sacred places to experiment in. That's why I love Barber Zoom. I think that there's an onus around, you know, if we've got these literally sacred places where Barber was, it's like we can't swear in the room, you know, you don't want to bring your friend who loves Osho and wants to talk about drugs and things like that. So I really find having maybe Barber places where it's sort of like you can experiment and anything goes, you know, and would be useful for the young people. Also, yeah, also I do think that at times, and not 100%, at times, I think it is very helpful to have young people only spaces, just because, not myself, but some young people I know aren't, they're not as comfortable in mixed generational spaces. They'd rather talk with peers of their specific own age. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Okay, we've got Meher's hand up for Barber family. Is that Gail or is that Meher? I don't know.
Mayor.
Okay, hi.
Hi. Yeah, I want to answer one very good question of Alisa's. I really liked it. She was meaning about how people come into Baba's fold like that, and then they this is really a good question. I really like. because many people who I have seen are young people from Bombay. I'm from Bombay. So who come to the Samadhi, they come bow down to Baba, and they'll think, oh wow, Baba, I'm come to Baba, I enjoy Baba and everything. And when they come back to where they come back to their work or to this thing, it is gone. Why is that so? Why is that? Because they don't believe. They just think that, oh, I'm believing, but they're not believing. That is my great idea. They don't believe. These young people. How much they just like to show off. So very few people like Baba.
I think that that's a very damaging thing to say personally. And I'll say as a young person who,
because very few young people are really taking into Babas. Other people are not, like very few. And if you tell them Baba, they'll ask, who's Baba? They will ask some of them. And you tell them, this is a nice Baba's photo. Is he alive? I said, no. Why? I said, why? It's everyone's wish. Baba's not there. But we go to the Samadhi. They don't understand. And when you tell them that, oh, you go to a temple, not to pray, and you come out, how do you feel? And when you go to the Samadhi, I've seen so many young people coming there, and they wear anything and come, and then you feel, oh, yeah, I bow down to Baba, and the next minute is gone again in their minds. And especially young, I've seen a lot of young college children. I go on telling them, bow down, listen to him. He's there talking in his own silent ways.
yeah. I think that, I mean,
Margi, I wasn't well, and Babas did everything for me. I didn't say a word. I just sat next to him. I always believe Baba, I sit next to Baba near my chair, and I just talk to him in my own ways, and that's it.
Yeah. And I think that's
well, go ahead, Margi.
Alisa, I really loved your talk, what you said.
Excuse me, what'd you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part.
I loved what you said. I really loved what you said.
Great. Well, thank you. One thing that I would say, though, is that there's, in what you're saying, it may be true that there are some young people, that don't take it seriously or don't understand.
Yes.
But I also would say there's a lot of older people who may be in that category too. But I think that, that's not, I think one of the things that we have to be really careful of in this realm is generalizing, because I do think that, it's not, what you're describing is not necessarily age related, because I find that a lot of the younger people, they're souls that are evolving, and just because they're in young bodies doesn't make them any younger than me. I mean, many of these souls coming in are older than me, right?
Alisa, I'll tell you another thing. Many older people, they want to they will talk about Baba on Baba Zoom. Many older people, because they have come into Baba's fold. But the younger ones are a little bit, shy. They don't want to say the answer. Very few will open it out. Because I come on Baba Zoom every morning and evening, and I have noticed that very few younger people will talk, and mostly all the older ones who I've seen really bring it out.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying. I think that's one of the reasons why we are trying to have these conversations, is because we want to invite the younger people, the younger people to come forward, because many of them hold so much wisdom. And, and I think, just to reflect back to the question Margi asked me earlier, one of the things that surprised me, another thing that I heard through the podcast talks was, the sense of the younger people sometimes feeling like they don't speak because their voice may not be heard, or is there a place for the younger people to have a vote or a say in anything that's going to be happening with the centers or whatever, and so I think that we have to start to invite that more. And that's the question, is how do we do that? And I think that's what we're trying to sort of bring out now. And there's all of these different perceptions that are happening. And unless we start to bring them out and really start talking about them, we will never kind of, they won't evaporate. They won't go away. They'll just keep, the stories we tell ourselves get so rooted, right?
And we can have them, like we really have how you're having this. We can have a real question and answer one and call them and ask them. That's also a way to bring it out.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And I think that's what on Saturday, what we may hopefully get to more, we want to invite the young people to think about these things and share, as well as the older people, because I think so much of it is like we're just conditioned to think certain ways. And it's not, when we really start to talk about it and bring it out, we realize maybe this isn't at all true, Yeah. So, but thank you for
I really feel
that sharing.
Sorry to say.
Go ahead, Margie.
I really think that there is something really important that's being said in this conversation that needs to not be said. And I think that what I have seen in this work that Jeff, Alisa, Michelle, and us have been doing is that the most important thing is to stop beating around the bush and to name it. Because there's a lot of stuff that gets said in the Baba world that's off color, and then it's like, oh, we just act a certain way and it's totally fine. I have no problem like being direct and calling it out and putting myself on blast in that way. But the older generation ever saying that the young people don't love Baba in the right way, it's creating a very unsafe space for us to be in. And that's something that, Meher, I appreciate what you're saying. And I think that I appreciate what you're bringing, but the way that it's said is really damaging, because it's basically telling the young people that the way you perceive us loving, that's the message that's being received, is that, the way that we love Baba isn't the right way. And that's really a big issue that we run into, is like, we're living out in the world. And we often feel that we're not seen in how we are thinking about Baba. And we love Baba in a very different way. Like, I know so many young people who I've gone to the youth Sahavas with who, you might not see them showing up on Baba Zoom or going to events or whatever. But, when you see them at the youth Sahavas and I reconnect with them, Baba is so much a part of their life, but just in a very background way. It's not as much. What I've seen is that the difference in the generations is that for the older generation, and perhaps this is a seasons of life thing, that there's more space for it, that they do come to more Zoom meetings. There are more conversations, they're on more boards, but that's also because they have the time. Even relating back to what Josh said, there is we live in a world where we have to make money. And I know a lot of young people get a lot of grief about, oh, why aren't you coming to Myrtle Beach? Why aren't you doing this? And that's really hurtful to us. I know, as somebody who's involved and talks to a lot of the younger generation, it's a really hurtful thing to say, because we go out of our way to try to do stuff. And so I appreciate so much of what you're sharing, Meher, but I also do think that we need to call it out when there are things that are said that can cause more of that disconnection. And so, that's just what I have to say about that, because I think that I see what you're saying. It also just looks really different for us, right? We go to the Samadhi, and for us to go to the Samadhi, it's like we have to take off work, we have to be there, and then we come back and we bring that love back to, whether I'm living in Phoenix, Arizona or DC, it just looks so much different. Alisa, is there anything what'd you say?
All right. I was gonna say AO has his hand up.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a hand up.
Hello. So first I want to say thank you for having this conversation. I'm relatively new to the Zoom conversation, so thank you for having me. I am a part of a community that reveres Baba as one of several other avatars. I am part of the Temple of the Universe in Florida, and Baba is one of six different masters that we revere. And so Baba has been part of my life for a while. And this conversation of the generations and the new generations and the older generations is one that we are only just now beginning to have this conversation and it's something that I feel quite strongly about because I am in the position to be that bridge, because I'm that elder millennial. And I think that is one of what was just said now, that part of the conversation is just said now, like how we worship, and that differences between how the older generations and how the younger generations worship is very different. And that has had a huge impact in how the conversation exists between them. Because yes, the younger crowd, we're not there, and we're not part of the conversation in the 70s and the 60s, and we're not around then when there was a very different way of worshiping, and it was a very different way of approaching God, a very different way of seeing, and like they were raised in a way that was very different. And so we see God, and we have a very different relationship with God, and it played a very different role. And so thus the relationship with God is expressed in a very different way. And does that make it any less valid? Does that make it any different? And I think but because the language in which we talk about it is different, it makes it very difficult to see how, even though that belief and that love and that devotion is so very fervent, is so very real, the language is different. And so it's difficult to understand. It is just as valid, it is just as real, it is just as strong, but it's hard to see that. It's hard to see it. And so a lot of the kids see the older generations doing things as a habit, as performative, as not really real, as just sort of a habit that they're doing. Whereas in the older generation, see the younger kids as being flippant and not really very respectful. And it's not really about that. It's a matter of not really being able to speak the same language. And that is something that I'm hoping to kind of learn from these conversations, is how you guys are bridging that communication gap. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
That's
so
all I had
much.
to say.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
AO. Ron. You want to unmute, Ron?
Hey, Bob. Yeah. I wrote down a couple of things. My memory's not that great, but the things that came to mind is it seems like in part the theme is that there may be problems that young people and older people can not connect very well, that there's a problem in connecting. And if that's and perhaps that could be true, except I don't really think we need to see it that way. Like Erich used to say, when people would come to Erich and say, Erich, we can't be like you. We can't obey Baba in the way you do because you were with him and he gave you instructions and things of that sort. But he would always say, we're in the same boat. And he explained why. I won't go into what he said about that, but it is true that there's so much more that is the same of what we have to be doing. And the way I see it is we have to let go of the problem part of it, the differences that we imagine are causing us not to be able to connect, and just open up to the idea that each one of us has things to learn, to heal from, and to contribute, and to know that that's the same for all of us. We're all on a unique path with Baba. We know that. Baba told us that he guides us in a unique way for us with our own karma and aptitudes and things like that. But so I'll leave it with the idea. This is something I heard from somebody who was a doctor, who heard from somebody who said that they had a particular medical problem, or and they had a name for it. I won't go into what that was, but his suggestion, not really as a doctor, but just a suggestion, was never say that's your problem, that you have that problem, that you have that medical problem. for 6 months. For 6 months, do not speak about there being I'll put it in our context. Do not speak about the idea that we have a problem between generations in the Baba community. Just don't even say that we have such a thing and see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at
Okay,
that.
thank you.
I love what you're saying. I think there's like two sides to that coin. Like, I don't know if I don't think there is a problem. I think that that's probably the wrong word, but there is a need to create community. And even Jeff, Alisa, and I just had a meeting about the Sahavas, and we're talking about what really is our intention. And our intention is not to address the problem of the intergenerational divide. It's to build community and to create community and create that bridge where there might be a little bit of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Right. And that is what we are trying to do exactly by talking about these things, by bringing it out. We are creating community right here in doing that, because we're sharing honestly, we're sharing really. And these things exist because that's what's, you know, the things that are not spoken actually wind up having the most power. So I think bringing them out sort of dissipates them and connects us really. So that's, I think, what the whole intention is in doing this.
Well, we just had Diane and Terry's hand up, but they put their hand
Did
down.
your hand go down?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, so Diane and Terry, and then Tony was after them, and then
I have no idea
Bill.
if my brain is going to be able to express what I'm thinking. So bear with me.
It's almost 11 o'clock here, Diane. So imagine my brain.
Exactly. Baba talked about not wanting this to be organized religion. And so, and I think somebody asked Erich how you do that. And he said, you know, you don't meet in groups bigger than 10, for example. I don't know if somebody could maybe correct my quote, maybe like Jeff or somebody. But I was thinking about the fact that you want to build a community, and I'm not sure what that looks like. Here we live in Los Angeles, and we have this incredible center, and there's maybe less than a handful of people under the age of 35 that come on a normal basis. Terry says that's not true, maybe 6 or 7. And then there's the center in Myrtle Beach, and then there's Maribot. I'm not sure, there aren't really strong urban, sorry, she just dropped watermelon on my leg and it was very cold. There aren't a lot of urban groups, so I'm not sure, besides Zoom, which is such a great way for people from all over the world, from East and West, to have this conversation. But how else do we do it? How else do you build community?
I feel differently than anyone that's talking right now. I haven't been here from the beginning tonight, but I think Baba lovers are Baba lovers, and we're all at the stage that we're supposed to be at. Like, we're older people, but we're not old Baba lovers. We weren't there in the 70s interacting with the Mandali or anything. And is Baba less important to me than he is to someone who did? I don't think so. I think we're there, you know, and we're here for a reason. And we age with this belief system that works for us. And I also think our relationship to Baba, everybody's relationship to Baba, is different. So the way he speaks to me or hangs out with me is different than Alisa or Diane. And talking about it and sharing it maybe could bring on a different dimension. It could bring on insights. It's just about loving each other, really. That's what he wanted. I mean, that's the biggest deal of all, is being able to express ourselves kindly and with love and with care. And, you know, I've talked with some adults that did all these things years ago, and they they're realizing that they come on with, like, you know, making people maybe a little jealous that they didn't have those experiences. I don't feel jealous. I wasn't there then. I mean, you can't be where you're not. And so you have to start where you begin. And it's, for me personally, the most expansive, wonderful experience I've had. I don't care whether I was there in the 70s or if I came fresh today. And having a partner to do it with, it's over the moon for me. I feel so grateful. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe we just have to be a little easier with each other. And even though we're older, we work and we have schedules and we, you know, we have family, and you do the best you can with what you have. I don't know. I don't really get that young people are any different, really. I think it's the same. I don't feel like I relate to Margi and Joshua different than I relate to Tony and Jeff. I might ask Jeff more because he's just a know-it-all. He can't help himself. But it's the same to me. You know, sometimes you feel like a brother, sometimes you feel like a child, you know, I don't know, but that's where I come from. So I'm sharing.
Jay Bob.
And I just want to address one thing that Diane said before we pivot on to Terry quickly, but Diane, that's something that actually Alisa, Jeff, and I have talked about in our meetings and also on the podcast episodes, is like, yeah, we're talking about intergenerational stuff, but this doesn't just, it's not just intergenerational in the West, right? It's also, how are we connecting with, you know, how are we diversifying the entire Baba community and making it feel more inclusive? And even Terry, you know, what you're saying too, I think Alisa can speak to this of her experience, but you know, in all these podcast episodes that we did and all these conversations that we had, the connecting piece is personal interest in each other, right? It's getting curious. Curiosity is it has really nothing to do with what your relationship with Baba looks like, or if somebody does it better. It's about getting curious and connecting to the person for who they are. And I think that that's actually where the disconnection is. I think that all this stuff about who loves Baba better, who does it better, how are the centers going to be, that is all going to work itself out when the background of love exists between two people or between communities of people. And this intergenerational Sahavas, I mean, I know for me, my intention is not to have some master plan that's going to create something, but to understand that we're all the same. And if we get curious about each other, we're probably a lot more alike than we realize. And we all love Baba. So who cares about the rest?
And we're loving the Baba within us and within you. That's what we're loving, is the how we all have that within ourselves. That's what makes it in common. And it's the first part of our connection, is I see Baba in all of you. And maybe I would love you if I didn't see Baba in you. I'm not sure, but I know that I do when I see Baba in you. And I know it makes up for a lot of stuff that might be like a little rough for me from certain people, or a little difficult for me from certain people. I just soften it because Baba would want me to soften it. Baba wouldn't want me to reject it. I don't know. It's just the way he talks to me. It has nothing to do with me personally. It's how he comes through.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you so much, Diane and Terry. That's really beautiful. I just am noticing a few more hands up, and I'm wondering, you know, if we want to have it. I don't know what time this ends, so I'm just kind of wondering if these Tony, I think, and Jill and Patty have their hands up.
Yeah,
Tony.
All right, Tony.
Okay, so I'm hoping I'm going to be able to say what's on my mind. I'm not taking notes, and there are a couple of things, but after this conversation,
things back.
After this conversation, I just feel like saying, yeah, it's all about the love. That's the beginning and the end of everything, really. But there were some other trains of thought that came up. One is, there's a social piece to all of this, and then there's the Baba piece. And the social piece has a way of seeming immensely important, and it has some importance for sure. And then the Baba piece sometimes gets a little bit squeezed, it seems sometimes, at least in my experience, it's been. So baby boomer generation, late baby boomer, but still baby boomer, you know, we were a big group. So whatever we thought and felt, that was the big news in the world. It was a unique kind of experience. And, you know, the Hoop said it really well at one point, hope I die before I get old. And there was a saying, don't trust anyone over 30. And there's a thing that there is in the first, you know, astrology in particular, right? But in the first 30 years of your life, you're still kind of getting away from the model where your life is controlled by others, from your parents, from the people around you, from your work. You get to around 30 and there's the shift and and now you own your own life. So until then, you can see the problem as being with how other people are behaving, because it's just the way we're built. It takes a while, and we get that big awakening at around 28, 29, and we know it's what we do is going to produce results one way or the other. The other thing is about kind of with that, even when I was 18, and part of this is my great fortune to have spent about a year around Harry Kenmore, particularly his talks twice a week for that whole period. And he was an Aquarian, and he was one hell of an Aquarian, because his message was, this is between you and Baba. Nobody, nothing comes between you and Baba, your relationship with Baba. Now, we have our reactions to people, the thing they say, but ultimately, there's a need, I think, for all of us in different degrees at different times, but to develop our own autonomy in our relationship with Baba, so that the hell with whatever anybody else says. Now, I'm balancing this with the generational piece, which instinctively is going to see controls or judgments coming from the outside. But even then, it was clear that that relationship was the thing that has to come first in a big way, and then deal with your reactions to how other people seem to act. And with age, you tend to, if you're lucky, you get the awareness also that what you're seeing, focusing on other people saying or doing that you don't like, is reflecting something that's in you that you don't like. But that takes a certain life shift that begins to happen. Yeah, I think what Terry was saying, it's all about the love. It's about, we are souls. That's my other thing, is we're souls. I don't see young person, old person. We're souls, and we're one. I mean, we're on the same level of existence, having variations of experience. Some have a generational tint, some have no some are very personal tints. So just to stay connected to the soul, to Baba in ourselves and each other. And the people who say crappy things, first, they probably don't mean it if they knew what they were saying. And the second is, there's some woundedness in them that's going on. It certainly has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with me. And where remembering that is important, I feel, is where it impinges on the sense of your own deep and ever deepening personal connection with Baba in your own way. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Thank you for having home the point. All right.
All right, Jill.
So, I really like what Tony was saying, because it is so personal, individual, and yet, so as one of the elders, it's not easy to get old. I remember Kitty saying that being old was what? Being old was not easy. And my concern with younger people, well, I'm a writer, so solitude is my way of life. When I don't go on Baba Zoom very much. And if I do, very seldom talk. But this whole gathering of the generations just has an energy and excitement about it that I can't resist. And one of the things that I really feel, I feel Jeff really helping people with, but you know, the younger generation. So my generation has been through a lot of, I'm going to call it persecution, because I did experience about 7 years of that. And you know, the outside world was not kind to Baba lovers. And in our families and different circumstances, we could go through some very negative treatment. And I know that I finally had to go into therapy to understand how to deal with people who seem to really hate me. And how do you deal with that? And the younger generation is going to be dealing, you know, you guys are all going to be dealing with new people, because Baba's name is going to grow. And there's going to be more and more people that are going to be interested in him with all their, you know, individualities. And it's going to be a big challenge, because with that, there are going to come criticisms and negativities and persecutions. And so that's something that's on my mind, which is, you know, I don't, you know, since I'm a writer, I try to think of things I can write that after I'm gone might interest people to read and help them. And one of them is going to be on how I learned to deal with getting an onslaughts of some negativity and make my way through it. And this word love is a very difficult word for me. I mean, love has so many layers. Kitty told me, you know, her first love was music. I mean, we look at love as being loving people, but Kitty loved music, and it was through her love for music she had so much to give all her students. And then she met Baba, and her love for Baba was so much stronger that she was able to give up the music for him. Although, as we find out, of course, she still loved music. In fact, one day she told me that in her next life, she kind of secretly hoped she might be a concert pianist. And I'm hoping I can be a music journalist and follow her around the world. So, but back to the difficulties that youth are going to be facing. You know, these are topics that I would like to see brought up and addressed, because you guys are still out in the world. You're not retired like many of us, and you have to deal with a very difficult world. And what I'm very interested in is ways that you all deal with this, and what you have to deal with, and what you think about how you're going to, you know, cope with more and more people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people coming to Meher Baba. And that's what you've got to cope with.
Okay.
So those are my thoughts.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jim. I really, really
thank you
love
for doing this. This is just really, it's really exciting.
And I think that what you're saying is exactly what Alisa and I are going to get out, because it just starts the conversation. It really does.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I mean, I know that people have their hands up, but I just want to say something, Patty. Thank you for that. That I really, your last comment really touched me, in the sense of, you know, just the times we're in, and the, you know, the struggles that are around us constantly. And I just feel a lot for the younger generation. And to me, I think a curiosity, like Margi was saying, which I think is truly one of the bridges. The more we are just curious about each other and how we relate and how we love Baba and how we find Baba in our lives, that is a bridge. And to me, it's like, I'm very curious about how the young people are holding on to Baba and building faith and trust in Baba in these times, because it is very different than the times that we were evolving and growing and coming into ourselves and into our professions and into our family lives. So I think there's a lot that the younger people can actually teach us right now if we listen. Yeah.
All right, Patty. You want to unmute yourself, Patty?
Yeah, I think I did. Did I? Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. All right. You know, everybody has kind of covered the ground of where I was going to come in and way back with Diane and Terry. Curiosity, heads up to that. That's absolutely perfect. The important thing I just want to concur with is that this mode of curiosity, having an open invitation to whatever form the soul is in and whatever age it appears to think it is, it doesn't really matter. You know, all it is that we show up and we go into our heart space and reach the place that we know we're one. And the openness, the curiosity, the presence. I will say that I was not unlike, I think, the generation, with the exception that the world was very different. And this is a marvelous point Jill is making, is that we grew up nurtured, and the 60s weren't so much like that, but we evolved in the way that Baba brought us to him. And we, as the soul drop in the ocean, finally get to the place where we are feeling more ocean and less drop. And as the youth I was, in the period I felt very isolated. I very seldom, even though I went to the center, India, probably every other year, and probably Myrtle Beach in between for many, many years, there was nobody here in when I was here for many years, and I was self-employed. So I was living my life and loving Baba and going back and forth in many things that would not look like a Baba lover to many people. So kind of like Jill, I don't have any problem with what happened. I just realized there was not the support that I would have liked of the community, unless I traveled to get to it. And I think a lot of the younger generation, I would look to my peers, but they weren't there. And, you know, so what I did, very similar, Margie, to what you brought up about sound therapy, you know, I became a herbal therapist. I did other things in the modalities of what, quote, healing was about. But the truth of the matter is the only healer is the divine love. I mean, it's God. We don't do a thing. We might produce a sound bowl in our hands, or we might think color therapy or art therapy, but really it happens internally. And once I realized all that, it's fun to have the toys, play with them. But, you know, if somebody wants to wake up, it's God's willing them to do that, not me. And so once I got over that, that was great. But there are a lot of things out there that we go through from infancy and the conditioning up to when we actually get to be a soul wanting to have connection with other souls through the element of love, the only element that exists, really. So, okay, I'm going to shut up. You know, I agree with so many of you on this, and I'd love to hear more with the young people. And I'm signed up Saturday because I'm looking forward to it. So, Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Thank you, Patty.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Patty.
All right, Richard.
You're muted, Richard. Come on. We've done this many weeks in a row now. No, I'm just kidding. You're good.
there I am.
Okay.
There you go.
I first of all, I think what Terry said about it's like Marconi's radio waves, you know, when you're talking to a Baba lover or on this Zoom, it's kind of cool, but you can feel that you're tuning into Meher Baba's radio waves, you know, the Marconi Baba radio waves. And so you know that, you know, in every person I see here, I know that if I met you in real life, I'd want to say, oh my God, how are you? What are you doing? You know, all this stuff. But so what Terry said, I think is right to the point. But the other part though is Tony, of course, is right. With Hindu astrology, the Saturn return is a very big deal in everyone's life. And it's 27 for women, I think, 28, 29 for men. But anyway, the bottom line is you're really burdened with a lot of stuff you bring in to just incarnate, you know, not to mention who your parents are and where you're living and what duties and responsibilities and goals and ambitions and desires you might have. But in the meantime, it's right on Baba's tomb. And it is, I have not come to teach, but to awaken. And he talks about, especially in the creation in his causes, he keeps calling it the turn. And when people are ready to make that turn, he's there. That's the joy. That's the beauty of the avatar. That's the greatness of the avatar. He is there. And when I was young, I kept looking around, and the only solace I had was rock and roll music. That was it. And then finally, I ended up in a place as a derelict, and I heard Rick Chapman and Alan Cohen. So, boom. Then But from there, I think what you're talking about from there is how do you nurture that after that? And I can't say. I don't know. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
All right.
I really, just go ahead, Peter.
Oh, Ron, you want to unmute?
Doesn't want to unmute. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to offer up an anecdote that I think will be a nice description of intergenerational connection, which is a story I heard years ago, and I've told it many times. If anybody met Padre, this is a story that where Padre is there, and Padre's sitting out on the in front of the Lower Maribad where he lived and hung out, and Sir Baba he's just sitting there looking out onto the road, and a rickshaw pulls up, and a fellow gets out by himself. Rickshaw goes on, and this guy is dressed in overalls, with no shirt. I'm not sure that he had shoes on, and he had this big shock of red hair and a big beard. And Padre just gets up and walks over to him. The guy obviously has never been there before. He's just looking around, figuring out where he's got to go. And Padre walks up to him, and he engages him. Who are you? And and he says, and he asks Padre, well, where's the tomb? I came to go to the tomb. And Padre says, is this how you want to go to the tomb, looking like this? Something to that effect. Well, this guy says to Padre, hey, old man, you going to try to keep me from going to Baba? And Padre grabbed him in a bear hug, and he said, a man after my own heart. Go right up that way.
Wow.
That can happen. I think that's what we have to be ourselves, and let's just see how it all unfolds if our hearts are sincere.
Yeah. Wow. I love that story. Okay. We got one. We'll do one more hand, I think, before we close it up.
All right,
Robin.
I don't know the exact quote, but I remember reading recently that Baba said one of the worst follies is to think that anybody should tell anybody else how they should travel along their spiritual journey. And I think we're all just doing what we're supposed to be doing, and Baba's doing it anyway. And I just love what everybody's saying, and I think it's great that we're talking about it. And I'm sorry, but Saturday I'm signed up at the center to substitute for somebody, so I'm going to miss. Are you going to record what's going to happen Saturday? Good.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yes, parts of it will be recorded. Obviously, we're going to have breakout groups for the discussion group, and so we can't record everyone, but I think we're going to try to have Jeff maybe that doesn't know this yet, but Jeff's discussion group recorded. So, I mean, he wants mine, I want Elisa's, and I also want, so we'll figure out one of the smaller breakout groups will be recorded, and then the Charles's talk will be recorded, but we can't obviously record the 25 little groups that happen. So we'll get something out on YouTube.
I just wanted to say, well, I just wanted to say a couple of things.
Oh, you
Jeff,
just
can you-
muted Jeff accidentally.
Okay. One thing, you know, when I came to Baba back in the 60s, and the older generation, there were just a few young people, but the older generation, and many of them who had met Baba, took such a personal interest in us. I mean, they moved aside everything and they were there for us. They weren't telling us how we should live our life and everything. We had interest and they provided it. I mean, even Adele would come up to, if I wanted to call up Adele and come, and she.
What, you
Hey,
muted
Jackie.
again? How did that happen?
I don't know. Anyway, she would, you know, so I could ask all about Baba. They were completely available, you know, and the one thing that they gave, I mean, what we've talked about here is the personal interest in each other. I mean, a personal loving interest and getting beyond the likes and dislikes that we have. And because it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a young kid or a teenager, or, you know, like, you know, like Terry and, you know, and Diane said, we're all gonna say, everybody is so interesting if we can kind of be there. Like Patty was saying, be there for them. It's like this idea of, well, I don't like this person, but I like that person. And, you know, I think of it like little petty despots, you know. Oh, I like you. Oh, I don't like you so much. Oh, I really like you. And I mean, we are diminishing the fun and enjoyment we can have with each other, you know. I think we can, so I don't notice so much generation. I mean, the difference in generation, but we could all enjoy, you know, each other, have a lot more fun if we would just really get more deeply interested in each other. And for example, I mean, like Kitty and Elizabeth, they grew up with classical music. They, you know, they kind of came from, you know, privileged, you know, class and everything. But then we came tumbling in here to the center, and Kitty and Elizabeth faithfully would be in the front row listening to Bob Brown. And this is not classical music. This is just, you know, folk music and kind of loud and everything like that. They got into our life, you know. I mean, they got into our problems. They got into what we did. Kitty would go, you know, play croquet, I mean, she just didn't sit there, but she kind of entered into our lives. And that's a beautiful thing. And of course, the Mandali, you know, they'd even say things like, you know, far out, or, you know, did you feel the vibes? I mean, Erich was using terms like that right out of our lexicon. So, you know, I think that that's why I just think if we spent more time with each other, we would really enjoy each other's company. And Baba and Mara would be right there enjoying it along with us. That's my feeling. Yeah, Jay Baba.
Jay Baba.
Go ahead, Lisa. Oh, you muted yourself. Now you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's Mercury.
I know. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, I just want to say something just before, because I know we have to end. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody. This has been so inspiring, and it's really wonderful to just be able to hear and listen to how people see this issue. and really feel inspired by the fact that just having these conversations helps connect us, and that's really important. And I really hope that as we go on, that we really just courageously listen to whatever anybody feels, because I know the ideal is that we don't see, like there's no differences and all of that, and it's true on a deeper level, but there are some perceptions of misconception, whatever, it's too late for me to hold those words now, but misperceptions. And I really hope that we flush those out and really come to deal with them, because I'm really a believer in truth, and honesty is really the quickest way to our hearts. So thank you all. And I want to just end real quickly with one story that I had with Arnavas's sister Rhoda. When Rhoda was dying, I was there at Merazad, and I had the wonderful opportunity to visit her and sit with her on the last, actually was the last day of her life. But one time I was sitting with her in her room, and she was just talking about, she said something about she wasn't afraid to die. And I said, she said, I'm not afraid to die. She said, but I have one sadness. I said, what is that, Rhoda? And she said, I just feel so sad to let go of this life, because I know, she said, when I come again, I'll be coming to the Samadhi. I'll be one of the young people coming. She said, but I won't remember my experience. And that was so, that has stayed with me so deeply, because when I look at these young people, who knows who these people are, right? I mean, we think that they may be, so I always just think of Rhoda saying that, she's just one of the young people now, and she won't remember her experience of having been with Baba. So that was her only sadness. It wasn't about dying. So I just want to end on that note. Thank you for inviting me.
One thing, Erich, Bill LePage asked Erich, what's going to happen over the next 700 years? He said that his Mandala and his close ones would be coming back. So it's not the end of the Mandali period. They're back and amongst us. A lot of these young people, could be one of the Mandali, and we're kind of treating them like, what do you know about Baba?
Right, exactly. We just got to open our ears.
So there's a party after this party, and there's a party after that one, and hopefully for 700, we'll use up 700 years until Baba comes again.
Well, thank you so much.
Can I throw in one thing? I work with a lot of people in their 20s and early 30s, and I don't know, I'm not going to say this right either, but people who are Baba lovers in their 20s and 30s are so interesting, because they're seekers. And I don't see that necessarily that's not the connection I have with people that I work with. And so I welcome this like manna from heaven.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jai Baba.
I just wanted to say, in the pre-COVID days, for a few years, I was part of an open mic community here in Queens, and people from their early 20s to one guy who I think he's older than you're allowed to be. And he would do free form poetry and rap. And we became so close because everyone was getting up there and expressing who they were. And in who they were, you saw yourself. And age played no part in it, no part in it. And if they can do it as Baba lovers, I think we can do it.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Well, thank you everybody that came on tonight. And I am so looking forward to the Sahavas on Saturday. Jokes are like cats out of the bag. It's just the Baba Zoom link. So we were trying to encourage registration, so we had an idea of who was attending. But if you don't want to register, you can just go to babazoom.net and get on that way. I'm encouraging you to register though, because I'm going to have a survey afterwards, or we're going to have a survey afterwards. So if you do want to register, send me an email, Margi Connor, MargiConnor at thenewlifecoaching.com. And I will send you the registration link, which I will be so gracious if you fill out. Anyway, And also I will send you a copy of the schedule, which you will not get if you don't register. So there's incentive.
And there may also be prizes mailed out. Margie loves mailing letters. She loves mailing prizes. So
Yeah.
you'll be surprised. Exactly. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.